always becomes a bit complicated.
It does. And you're just like, this is a call button. You press it, you put the phone into your ear, and they're like, but what if he doesn't pick up? But what if he's with his friends? But just call him to find out.
And it's difficult because it is a skill. So if you want that kind of interaction.
Hey guys, today I'm joined by my best friend Aoife, who's based in Malaysia, and we are going to be talking about long distance friendship and maybe relationships because, as you can see, we're not in the same place by any stretch of the imagination.
No, we're actually in the same house. We just changed up the background deliberately so it looks like we're completely different sides of the continent.
Totally, that's the idea. So yeah, let's get into it. The first thing you need to remember is that long distance relationships, it's mostly, I think, prioritization. I don't know what you think. Do you think it's prioritization?
As in, like, what you prioritize? 100%, definitely. I was thinking about this morning.
Yeah, because you have to make time for your friends. And when I say prioritize, I don't mean studies, friendship. No. But especially if you've got such a massive time difference like myself and Aoife, but there's like 9 hours, you have to think that one through. You can't just be like, I'm gonna call Aoife today. I did that once. I called at 1 a.m. in the morning.
No, it's 9 a.m. 9 a.m., 5 a.m. I mean, I could still be asleep at 9 a.m. It's the holidays. I can get away with it. It's fine.
So actively making time for that person, which is something we don't really do in general in friendship. If you're next to the person, I don't know if you get that, but when you're with people, it seems like you don't actively make time for them as much.
I think it's definitely very interesting, and also because you were saying at the beginning, like distant friendships, like being a possibility. It's interesting because some friendships are completely based on just being in close vicinity and seeing each other every single day. Like a lot of people that you're close with, you know a lot about them just because you're around them all the time. So you hear the stories they say, you hear what they have to do and what they think and all that. And then some friendships are like from like actively seeking each other out. So for many friendships, I think it changes a lot, especially for someone like me who's terrible at keeping in contact. But I think it's definitely prioritizing, and it's not just like between studies and friends necessarily, because I really value being by myself. I don't necessarily need to have a deadline, but in my brain I'm still busy, even if it's not something someone else put on me. Cause like, I want to do this right now, so I can't, like, I don't want to speak to people. And I think that's easier for some people than for others. But for me, I definitely have to like make that decision. Is like, I haven't called this person for ages. I want to like call them. I'm going to call them now, or like later. And then sometimes when I feel like it, no one's online. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with everything you said. That is basically why I was trying to say badly. But yeah, I think it's also online relationships are so different from your average friendship. When it comes to getting to know people, you don't have to talk to them as much to get to know them. By just looking at someone, you can already get to know their character, their likes, their dislikes, how they value people, all manner of stuff. And I feel with online relationships, you have to say more about yourself, which is something I feel like a lot of people miss.
Sometimes you won't even be on a call with someone. A point that I realized recently, there are different types of friendship, and I know some friends who, they're amazing at they just call people and they just like hang out, they watch something, they just like have someone there. I get kind of distracted when I do that. So for me, I realized that I kind of function best in the kind of letter writing. So like I use voice messages or like essay type, like paragraphs. It's like, this is what I've been doing this week. And then like 2 days later, it's like, this is what the other person's doing. So by the weeks past, like 2 interactions have been shared, but they're really detailed, so it works. Whereas I find it difficult trying to stay in contact with a friend of mine who doesn't text in long paragraphs or send voice messages, because then there's this kind of disconnect. Whereas like if we're in person, maybe it would have worked. When you're trying to like have a long distance relationship, you really need to make sure that you're putting, as you said, putting that extra bit in, because there's a lot that you can't rely on. So you have to rely on words and thought. So if you want that kind of interaction, you need to practice the skill of old-timey letter writing. I was speaking this with my parents, but we kind of live now with, you can interact just by liking something or like double tapping, commenting, and they're always very short and quick. But especially if you're just texting without calls, you kind of need to go that extra step further. So otherwise, it limits the connection. in a way.
Yeah, I completely agree, because you don't have the person there to look at their mannerisms. They have to tell you in a lesson, and I'm not saying you get them right. So when I'm sitting next to someone
So like my legs are all over the place. My right eyebrow twitches when I lie.
That's not what we're saying, but you have to be more open.
I feel like, to me, I kind of think of it as a similar skill to kind of small talk. A lot of people don't like small talk, but I actually find it really valuable because it's that kind of icebreaker, right? Like, you may be talking about nothing, but you're kind of putting feelers out and testing how the person's feeling, what the person's like. And that's kind of what it is. Like, you could just be talking about your day, and like, maybe they're not interested, but you need to give them enough material so that if they're interested, they can ask you about something. If you just say, I'm fine, the person doesn't, like, they don't know what to grab onto. But if you said, oh yeah, I went swimming this week, then they could be like, oh, where did you go swimming? How was it? Do you go swimming often? Like, it could be something just very simple, but you give that kind of branch out to as a possibility for more conversation.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, which brings us on to our next point, actually. So I've seen a lot of people text, and it's not because I stare over their phones while they're writing. I have a lot of friends who text me, or they'll be like to me, I met such and such, but like, we're not talking, I don't know what's happening. And I'll be like, you're not making conversation. That's what's happening. And you have to make conversation, and it sounds really simple, but as Aoife was saying, you can't just write to someone, I'm fine. You have to give them bits of information they can tease out and, develop a conversation. And you don't have to say, my week was good, I went to visit my grandma, then I took my dog to the vet, then I did this, did that. You don't just tell them everything. It makes it easier for them to get to know you. It makes it easier for the conversation not to just go.
And it's difficult because it is a skill, and I know that for me, like, the difficult part is like the first instinct is like, but that's going to be really awkward. Yes, but then you practice it and then it won't be awkward. It's the kind of thing, if you can't be scared to be awkward. Like, sometimes you say something and the person doesn't say anything about it. Okay. But it's like, it doesn't really matter. It's like part of the process. And then like eventually, it's like with small talk, you put out a bunch of things, a bunch of them don't work, but then maybe you find one avenue of conversation and then you can go on. It's glorious.
I met so many people and they'll be like, I can't call such and such because that's weird. It's that phone. The original purpose of the phone was to call people. What are you on about? Cool is what this is for. So I'm sorry, I don't really care if you met them like yesterday or whatever. Call them! That's like the best way to get a relationship going, is to call them. And voice messages is so helpful because it's like a long phone call, essentially. Calling just means you get to know the person so much more. You hear their different voice tones. As nice as we all know texting is, you can't build a substantial friendship or relationship, for that matter, on just texting someone. I'm sure there's somebody out somewhere where that's worked fine for them, because there will always be exceptions. But in general, calling someone, it will mean essentially that your friendship progresses faster. And I'm not saying it progresses faster in a romantic relationship. Like, you need to call your friends. You need to show them you care. Aoife, please, shut me up.
No, I mean, like, you're absolutely right. At the same time, it's the sort of thing, like, you can't, it's difficult because the phone has advanced so much. It's like no longer a phone. It's basically a computer. But it's still valuable. Like, there's a reason, like, phones were such a huge step forward. And it is a very significant tool. And often you find, like, I did it last week and it was really weird. Like, I needed to contact someone because I was dropping something off. And I just texted them that I was, like, on my way. And got there, they weren't there. And so I just, like, handed it to someone else. And on the way back, like, I think my mom had to text me. She's like, what, did you call them? Completely slipped my mind. I was like, yeah, you can do that. It's like, that's the most obvious thing to do, but because we get used to like texting and to like not having to use the call function, you just make things more difficult, and it doesn't become like an option, which you kind of need to be wary about. Because, for example, in that situation, I could have easily met that person, but I completely forgot that I could. And it's like to like be aware of all your options, I guess.
Yeah, totally. That's another thing. Just like pick up your phone and call people. The more you do it, the less awkward it will get, and there will always, with friendship, be that one moment when you're like, I don't want to call them, nerve-wracking. But just call them. Don't sit around thinking about it. Just pick up the phone and call them. And I suppose if your friend is the same gender as you, well, I mean, I don't really care. Calling another girl is not as big of a thing as calling a guy. Like, calling a guy, there's a whole, like, I don't know what goes on there. I seriously don't.
It always becomes a bit complicated.
It does. And you're just like, this is a cool button. You press it, you put the phone into your ear, and they're like, but what if he doesn't pick up? But what if he's with his friends? But just call him to find out. This goes generally. It doesn't matter if it's a guy or girl. If you're calling this person and you're writing this person and they're not making any effort to write or to call you or to voice message you or to come see you if they don't live like across the other side of the world, then you have to think, why am I doing this? Because it could be that they're busy or it could be that they're not treating you properly. And the last thing you want to be doing is wasting your time with someone who doesn't value you. That's just like a waste of your time, mate. Move on. Find a new friend.
I felt like there was a jump there. You're completely right. But I would say that, like, I don't know. You would distance yourself. But then at the same time, this is just me defending myself because I take ages to reply to people.
No, but you reply. Like, it's fine if they take time to reply, but they still reply. And they're like, oh, sorry, I was doing X. But if they're still making effort in the friendship, I think it's okay. You have to decide whether you want to stay there at the end of the day, even if they might call you every once a month and you want them to call you every once a week. If that's not for you, then you can go. It gets relative. But like, if you're calling the person and they just don't call you at all, ever, and like you call me, so like you can't say you're a bad friend because you call me, and stuff, and you write to me, like you make the effort to send me voice messages and blah 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 blah, blah and we write to each other, even though I definitely forget. So I'm sorry.
It's fine.
It's the age. You've got exams. But like, if they're not making any effort for you, I mean, obviously no effort. It's all relative to what you think is not any effort. But I would just say there's a point when you get to in a friendship. It doesn't matter if they're online or not online. We just take friendship generally for a minute. It's never fun to be the only one making the effort.
And that is a positive of having long distance friendships. Because at any moment, if you're just sick of them, you just don't respond. So it becomes that much easier.
And I think with long distance, it's also easier to see when someone's not your friend because they have to actively not put as much effort into you, and it might be hard to see at first, but you see it. You definitely see it. If someone goes from calling you, texting you, and then slowly you can see them doing it less, and yeah, they might be busy, so don't just go up and be like, yo, Sam didn't write to me 10 times this week. He wrote to me 10 times last week. He's not my friend. And he might be busy, okay? Like, guys, let's calm down. He might be busy.
I think it's interesting, though, because for us, we've actually never met. So This is a friendship completely based off the internet.
Yeah. And I think it proves that internet friendships can work. Which actually brings me to a very important point. How you meet people. And I really don't have any advice on that. Aoife and I have never met, as she said before. But I can see that she's Aoife and she can see that I'm Adele.
Am I, though?
Are we, though?
You never know.
Question, you never know.
You're a really, really intelligent robot.
Are you?
Consent?
Right.
Is she?
You know, keep your parents in the loop, because there's nothing worse than you not keeping them in the loop, and then who you're talking to turns out to be a real whacked up person, and you've got this problem to deal with, and you're trying to deal with it on your own. By keeping a trusted adult in the loop is just always safer, it's always useful.
Just reassuring to have that you know that there's like a backup.
Yeah. I think one of the nice things about being long distance friends as you get older is that you can meet up with people. And I'm a bit too young to be able to do this at the moment because I can't drive. But when you get older, it's exciting, I'm sure. I haven't gotten there yet, so I'll tell you guys this when you get there. But I'm assuming when you get older, it's exciting because you can meet people. Like when I get older, I can fly to Malaysia and go meet Aoife.
And I mean, I do have connections to England, so at some point...
I'm here. For me, at some point. But yes, I think that is all I have to say about long-distance relationships. Do you have any other points, Aoife? Or shall we wrap it up?
With long-distance relationships, I think it's important, like, there are so many ways to go about it. There are a lot of options, like, now with device and machinery. Like, computers, there are so many ways. I mean, like, Zoom, Skype, whatever. You can text people, you can call people. You can write them letters. That's always fun. There are voice, like, messages you can send. Write them, handwrite an essay, take a screenshot of it and send it, you know. Whatever floats your boat. And I mean, it's a different skill kind of, but I think the skills that you learn while holding like long distance relationships is a useful one that you can use in like just like that kind of conversing and being able to hold a conversation with someone or like getting to know someone. Those are useful skills. I've now forgotten.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
pretend I said something really insightful.
You did. Good points there.
Stroking my non-existent white beard.
But yeah, it is a different skill, and it takes practice as anything in life does. But it is fun. At the end of the day, friendship is fun. Have fun.
I remembered my thing. It's also just like having people in different places is great because also it gives you like connections. I guess so. Like even if you've been conversing with someone for a long time and you're gonna go to Sweden because you've got something there and you have a contact there, then that's like a useful thing to know. You don't necessarily need to be tied to them, but then like if you're in trouble, you've got someone that you know there, and like different things. You get to know people outside of like not just your social circle, but an entire different country or continent. And that's always good to have connections. Another upside of trying out having long distance like friendships is that you can then, if you feel like what you have now isn't what you want, or you want more, like there are conversations that you can't have with the people around you that you would like to have, then you can find someone, which is honestly mind-boggling, but you can like try and find someone that you can then have those kind of conversations with and that kind of relationship with.
Do comment down below which tip was most helpful for you. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe with your online friends so you guys can work together and have a wonderful friendship. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you guys very soon.